Wednesday, December 21st. My name is Tom Magrino. We have a very special final show of 2011 for you, mostly because we have Brendan Sinclair on the show.
That is, I make everything special.
Oh, yeah. Well,
that's what I do.
That's what you do. Curtis said, also a special man.
I am still alive, from what I can tell.
Seems likely. Your camera color is a little wonky. But really, Daniel Erickson is why this show is special today. Daniel is the lead writer on Star Wars: The Old Republic.
This is true.
That is true. So I gotta ask, like, when was it? When did Greg and Ray ring the NASDAQ opening bell? Was that
a couple of days ago or yesterday?
Was that too? I mean, was your guys' reaction? Come on, guys, not the Jedi robes again.
No, we love the Jedi robes.
No?
And did you notice? Wall Street did very well.
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah, that was a little Ray.
That was...
he does a little hand wave, and like there's very little he can't get done.
He seems like a man who would be in control of the Force. I mean, the man's a doctor.
He is a doctor, and he is the concentration is there.
Yeah. Does he ever just drop random doctor knowledge, like, oh, you should really take some prednisone or something for that?
Yeah, actually, they don't do it very often, but it is interesting to be like at a party and see how many people will come to them for it. Like people will still go up to Greg and say like, "Oh, hey, good thing on the game." And I've got this thing. Can you look at this?
Totally, this rash, and it's pretty gross. But I feel like since you're a doctor, I can talk.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So this growth has just been oozing
for
about a week and a half. And is it supposed to ooze? Like, is an ooze good? I was thinking maybe we should get actual benefits instead of just being able to, your open door policy isn't really covering my medical needs. That is actually how all of the medical benefits at BioWare work. Is you get a twice yearly with Ray and Greg.
Oh my God. Okay, we're gonna get to the game before this gets you fired. So you're a lead writer on Star Wars: The Old Republic. I was looking at Moby Games, their summary of your work history. You started off on NBA Street.
Yeah, so let's see the short version of that one. I was a critic way back in the day. Next Generation Magazine, Daily Radar, the birth and unfortunate death of that, and decided to get into games. The first place I ever went was BioWare. So I knew people because I'd been in the industry and came up and said, "Oh, I love you, BioWare, give me a job." And they said, what do you do? And I'm like, "I love you." And they're like, "Yeah, okay. No, you can't have a job." And so I started going, and here's my little tip for people out there who want to get into the games industry. If you ever meet people, hold on to their business cards. I had a lot of PR contacts and not a lot of developer contacts, but one of them I did have was a guy named Will Moselle who worked up at EA, and I didn't actually remember him or what they did up there. And I called them up and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job, da-da-da-da." He totally remembered me.
Oh, nice.
When they had brought the first NBA Street down, I had basically torn a new one.
Oh.
And, but early, like on an early build, there was a bunch of stuff that I was like, this is really derivative, da-da-da-da. And not only had they changed stuff based on what I'd said, but he had actually really remembered this. So he said, "Oh yeah, we really need a design guy come up." And I said, "Okay, well, I've never watched an NBA game." Is that
right? I was about to ask, are sports games actually your thing, or was that just
well, I mean, I played football when I was young and stuff like that, but like the basketball definitely was not.
How different can they be?
Yeah, no, it's very, very much the same. And what's funny is I actually knew more about the stuff I got into doing. Like my folks lived in East Oakland for a long time. I grew up in a predominantly African-American. Like I knew more about street ball than I knew about basketball. So that was actually kind of interesting to go up there. And long story short, yeah, they had a bunch of guys that were really good sports guys, but they didn't have a big design group. And by NBA Street 2, I was the lead designer on the game. But even then, people were constantly making jokes that I was going to try to put elves and dwarves into the game.
Okay.
They kind of knew once. There was a review for NBA Street 3 that said the single-player mode is so deep and complex, it's like playing a sports RPG. And I literally
remember that.
I cut it out and I sent it to Greg Zashek at BioWare, and I'm like, I don't know what else I can do here. Like I think I'm as close as I'm going to get. You need to bring me in, and they did, and I got to go to Dragon Age Origins, which was fantastic. So. And
you were like a writer on Dragon Age Origins?
Yeah. So when I went there, I was like, "Hey, I'm a lead designer," and they're like, "We don't need those." And I said, okay, well, what about a normal designer? And really what they had at BioWare at the time was tech designers, like really a lot of guys who had programming backgrounds and did the heavy scripting and that sort of stuff. And I was like, well, I don't have any of those useful skills. And they said, okay, well, we also have writers. And I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this years ago when I first applied? Because I had applied for like an assistant production job or something. But my background is like I've got a degree in playwriting and I was a critic and all that. So yeah, I applied for the writing job and got that, and then got taken down to start a studio and the biggest writing team in games.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where we go next. Like, what does it even mean to be a lead writer on a game this big?
It means you don't write very much.
Yeah.
That's actually what we found pretty early was that at the beginning I was going to be writing one of the classes entirely. I was going to be writing the bounty hunter, and the first 2 planets of the bounty hunter I did write and laid out sort of the story for chapter 1. And after that, Randy Beagle came in and did a fantastic job on it. And although I picked up little bits and pieces here, really my thing was to hold the entire piece in my head.
Okay.
So at the end of the project, we counted it up. We looked at all the stuff. We realized we had done 60 man years worth of writing on the project. And I had to review and understand every single line of all of that. Edited every piece in there, connected the stories. Each of the class stories is actually written by a completely different author, which gives them a great sense of continuity. And they're actually like they're very clean, pure pieces. But that meant somebody needed to be there saying, hey, this piece you're writing, but we need to make sure this also works with this thing over here. And in fact, bringing a lot of the classes together. So when you're playing through the game multiple times, you learn more about the galaxy. One of my favorite things in there is actually being on the Imperial side and realizing you're being lied to and being fed propaganda because you were actually on the Republic side when the event happened.
Oh, interesting.
And you're like, that is not what happened at all. And they're like, and then our empire very wisely decided to let the Republic people go.
So how many writers do you have working on this?
Average, I say we tend to sit around a dozen. There's about 20 credited writers on the game. We've been as big as 16 at any one point. And then Dragon Age and Mass Effect were like, oh, we want our writers back. You can't keep them forever. So we had to give some back.
So you've got like 20 different writers work in the game at the moment. How do you take each of those writers with their own distinct tone and style and then just like make it into a consistent, coherent Old Republic tone and style? Like, do you get the people that are just like, oh, well, maybe this is a little standard, and then the people that are like, let's totally go way off the wall abstract?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that that's a huge part of my job is, it's very much an editor-in-chief or a lead writer if you're doing a television show where you have multiple writers. What you don't ever want to have happen is you don't want the player to turn around and feel that difference. You don't want them to feel, oh, I just jumped writers. So in classes, writers get a lot of chance to do exactly that. The class pieces are almost genre pieces. So Hall Hood, who writes The Smuggler, has written an action comedy. It's a little bit Firefly. It's a little bit Big Trouble in Little China. It's what would it be like to live Han Solo's life, right? Which means it's crazy. Everything's always blowing up in your face. There's ridiculous romances, etc. So you do feel like you're living in sort of a different little world. But then what we have to do is when you're going and playing the world quests, everyone has to learn the smuggler voice because all the smuggler specific lines need to stay in his world. And we also have pieces that are a little bit more one class or another. So a world arc chain might in fact be, we would never say it to the player, but it might in fact be a smuggler themed chain. So you might get on sort of a ridiculous madcap adventure that takes place in the underworld. And even though you're not a smuggler, you're getting a little taste of what Smugglerville is like.
So there's all these different tones, but you're not really trying to communicate it to the player. Like, if you want action comedy, check this out. But if you want, no, that's all under the hood.
Yeah, it's definitely under the hood. We do have a little piece when you first make a character. There is a story tab, so people who are really driven by that, and we kind of hint a little bit at it because that obviously for people that are coming there for the differentiating factor, that might be a big piece. That people say, hey, I want to play a little bit more complicated, a little bit darker sort of piece. I'm going to go and play an Imperial agent, for instance.
So the story in an MMO is just, it's so sprawling. Like I can't think of anything. Every other kind of aspect of games, like, okay, well, the cutscenes, like, yeah, we can liken it to movies. We can liken this to books. The story of an MMO just seems like you don't have a template to work off of other than other MMOs.
Well, actually, it's very much not other MMOs. The template is a enormous multiplayer BioWare single player game. The MMO template obviously is, has very often been really no story or no consistent content. Somebody asked me the other day and they said, well, what do you think that was really different about this game? And I said, you've been playing? And he said, yeah. And I said, so what happened on your Origin world? And he told me. And he didn't tell me about any of the loot he got, and he didn't tell me about any of the levels he got. He went through and told me the entire plot of what happened. And I said, that is exactly what's different.
Are you guys like noticing that people are actually playing? Like, I know you guys have been saying, hey man, this is what makes this is what makes this game different. Are people actually like getting on board with the story and not just slamming through it like they would in another MMOs?
There is a very small percentage of people who came on day one and knew they were going to be first. They were going to be first for everything, right? And those people, and we can see the statistics, they're banging away at the spacebar as fast as they can. The interesting thing about it, at least anecdotally, as we've seen these guys talking in the message boards and stuff, is the vast majority of the community is like, what are you doing? You're missing the best stuff. And we always get the same answer. Oh, I was in beta the entire time. I played through all the storylines of the class that I knew I was going to play when I rolled. I've had the entire experience. Now that we're live, I'm getting to the end. But for the most part, it looks like people are, in fact, stopping and smelling the roses, which the entire place that the MMO genre had gotten, where 90% of your resources went into a part of the game that people considered in their way, is just really backwards.
So what's your overall personal favorite class storyline? Are you still favored towards the bounty hunter since you originally wrote it?
Well, I definitely would never pick my favorite storyline. That's dangerous territory.
That's like picking a child.
It is very much. Tell me which of your kids is least ugly.
Well, definitely the middle one.
I will say for gameplay, there's a few things that I've really enjoyed. I'm a guy that if you hand a sniper rifle to in any game, I'm a happy camper. And so I kept a very tight eye on the agent sniper class. Very early, I remember realizing that, hey, why does a sniper not actually have a longer range than other people? And Combat basically said, because it's a hard balancing for this and this, but you're right, we should absolutely do this. And they've made a beautiful sniper class. One of the things I really enjoy is just being spoiler guy, like in Hutball. I'm never going to be the best PvP guy, but I can figure out who the best PvP guy is on your team and just kill him constantly for no reason, from a terrible angle that he can't see what I'm doing. Whether he's near the ball or not, I'm just going to take him out of the game.
Is it difficult at all writing for, say, the sniper class when it all kind of has to come back to what you do is take out enemies from far away?
Not at all, because the sniper is an advanced class from the agent, and the agent is obviously a lot more complex. The agent is sort of our Jack Bauer, meets Bourne Identity, really complicated, very much in the spirit of sort of like the old Cold War spy books. So it is very rarely I don't think any of our stories tend to be very combat-based stories.
Yeah. So which, I'm kind of curious what the first thing that was written for this game that's actually in the game. Like, what is the first dialogue line or the first...
Sith Warrior.
Okay.
Very first conversation you'll actually see in the game, in fact.
Oh.
The Sith Warrior was the first thing we wrote. Korriban was the first planet we put together. And so this is not counting, at one point, the entirety of Chapter 1 was playable. So to give you perspective, each class has like a Star Wars trilogy for it. Chapter 1 itself is longer than an entire playthrough of the original Knights of the Old Republic. So Chapter 1 for all classes was fully written and scripted entirely in Neverwinter Nights at one point.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
Because we didn't have an engine where you could actually do any of this yet. So not counting those versions that we edited, but I went in and checked the edited version the other day, and that first Sith Warrior story, the very first conversation, is on, I believe, version 260.
Wow. So there was a lot of revision. There was a
lot of revision. It was our big learning piece. And I'm actually playing a Sith Warrior right now in the live game because it was the first thing we did. So it's actually the thing I have not played in the longest, right? That was the one that we kind of did so much of our prototyping and so much of our early work on. So now it's beautiful to go back and see it with all the wonderful cinematics and all the voice support and the great audio stuff that they've done and go, oh, wow, hey, yeah, this the dream came true.
Yeah.
So how do you actually balance out the storyline companions with the actual gameplay? Because I'm playing as an Imperial agent, and I've had Kaleo with me for quite a long time. I'm about to leave Nar Shaddaa, and I think I'm on to Tatooine next. And it seems like I've, pretty much just gotten to know her personally and played, because she's like a tank range shooter. I don't even know when I'm going to meet my next companion, and I'm really looking forward to it.
You're gonna get an avalanche very soon. So one of the interesting things about when we first did the game was that we had designed a whole lot of the storyline pieces that were done, and we didn't actually know which order some of the planets were going to go in. So people wrote their companion characters. The companion characters are deeply immersed in the story. And for some very complicated reasons I won't go into, we ended up having to put the planets in some very specific orders. And some of it was as easy as just wanting to get variety as you went to one planet and the next. And some of it was actually some strange technical things we had at the time. And the writers had actually laid down where the companions came before we knew that. So some of the classes suffer a little bit more than other classes because of that. The Trooper gets his second companion right after the first capital world. The Jedi gets his on the first capital world, the Jedi Knight. And the agent actually, I think, might finish getting his companions before everyone else, but starts with the second one later than most of the other classes.
So when you're writing the story, is it a case of like when you're trying to get players to look at the story, do you feel like it's you guys who are putting in, ways in which we're going to put a block here so that the player has to look at this story? Like, I guess I'm just kind of curious how you guys are doing the story, or how you're getting people to care about this story. Is it like a gameplay thing, or is it just like the quality of the writing, or what do you think people are responding to there?
I think it's the quality of the writing. So one of the things that we heard when we first started doing this was, people don't like story. In their
Which is
games.
totally true, because MMO's story up to that point
exactly,
has been
totally not true.
completely thrown away.
Right, but that's the problem, right? It's the same thing. We keep having this movement in Hollywood where they say, people don't like long movies. We need to make movies 90 minutes, 80 minutes. No, people don't like long, crappy movies.
Right.
People will sit through 2 hours of a good movie, no problem, right? Nobody sits there and goes, the latest Scorsese flick was too long, whatever. People say, the latest, Metacritic rated 30 movie that, it's the throwaway, totally stereotypical date movie was too long.
Right.
Same thing. Bad storytelling in games, which has been terribly prevalent in a lot of places, has made people think they don't want storytelling in games. But here's what we've learned. Good storytelling just makes people stop and pay attention, period. In every genre, in every place. If you do things well, it's just there. It's like one of the early lessons we learned even before the VO is if you're going to put dialogue on screen, people say, I don't want to read. But if you put dialogue on screen one sentence at a time, they've actually read the dialogue before they
have the negative reaction of, text.
You actually can't stop yourself from reading 8 words of dialogue. There's nothing you can do about it.
You're using the force on them to get
so much about it is presentation. And it's not true that that no MMOs even had storytelling, but a number of them just went about it in ways that actually blocked players from interacting with it. There are MMOs that after I went out of my way to try to see what their writers had done, I said, there's actually some really interesting stuff happening in here, but it was not presented in an easily digestible way. And because they were not confident in it, it was also always designed to be as quickly dismissed as possible. And the problem is, if you've designed your game in such a way that you are encouraging and you're saying, hey, if you don't like this thing that we think you probably won't like, you can get away from it very quickly. You start to feel like you are being extremely inefficient if you are hanging around and looking at everything. So for us, what we found is if you sit somebody down in front of one of our conversations, it's just a couple of numbers to pick what you're doing. It looks like a movie. It feels like a movie. It's done in the camera style and the directing style that you're used to. People just naturally respond to it.
Yeah, and it seems like it would make other parts of the game more entertaining as well. It's like if you have a very good story and a compelling thing that you're making people do, it's like you're not going to end up with the kill 10 rats kind of quests. Did you find
context means everything? Even if you are, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is people started saying, hey, but you still have these quests that are like, go kill this thing. And I was like, yeah. The most popular most amazing fantasy ever done is one giant FedEx quest. Here's a ring, go drop it in a volcano.
That's fair.
Right? It's everything exciting that happens between there. Oh God, we've been attacked by orcs. Let's see, how many of them are there? All right, I'm going to say 30. Kill 30 of them so there are no more orcs. Fantasy, and in fact, most of our sort of big adventure tales have always been very conflict driven. But it's the context of that conflict. It's the character building. It's the enhancements and the stories that happen within it that is actually what you remember and what you talk about later. And that's where I feel like we've made the great strides, is as people are calling each other. And if you've got multiple people in the studio playing, you're probably seeing this already, where people start to do the water cooler talk much more like a TV show than they do about a normal MMO. They're not saying, hey, I found this awesome thing of loot. They're like, oh my God, I was playing yesterday and the most crazy thing happened. Okay, there was this girl and she was doing this, and they're telling stories about themselves.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because it seems like storytelling in MMOs up to this date has been the stories that players experience with one another, as opposed to the stories that are given to them by the game. And it seems like that's kind of what makes MMOs, or what people really respond to in MMOs. So would you say you're like just reframing that, or?
Well, I think both of them exist in the same place, but I go back to the pen and paper games, which was always our great experience. It was about how we as people and as friends responded to the story that somebody else had put together, right? How we responded to those challenges. And it's why I love the multiplayer stuff. I love the multiplayer dialogue and the flashpoints, and when people are having these discussions, and that's what you hear is, I'm sure people were discussing after I was playing this week and saying, oh my God, and we were trying to do this thing and we were playing the whole time, but our Sith warrior was a giant Care Bear and he was like, no, we have to save everybody. And so we're getting dragged around, and, so you get a little bit of both.
Yeah. Would you say players are, I don't know, actually interact, or have you identified with how players are interacting with the story that you weren't really expecting, or?
Yeah, I think that the number one that I did not expect was, I was very protective of the conversational cinematic scenes when you were in a group, and it's like, okay, well, the chat window needs to go away and people are going to be concentrating on the thing and they're rolling and they're in character. A number of groups instantly open that chat window back up.
Okay.
And again, back to the pen and paper thing, I don't know why I didn't expect this, because that's exactly how a pen and paper group works. They metagame through the whole thing. So they are very much paying attention to the story. And then in the chat window, they're like, oh my God, this guy's super lame, blah, blah, blah. Right? Or if you were sitting pen and paper, the DM would be like, are you saying that? And they're like, no, I'm not saying that. We're just talking, right? So they'll sit there and discuss what they're going to say to the guy. They're like, oh my God, like, choose that option. That's super funny. No, I need to go dark side because I haven't seen this. So they'll run the whole metagame thing. Well, they are still clearly thoroughly involved in the story because they're discussing it there. And I did not, looking back, it makes sense, but it was not a player behavior I expected to see.
So are there any changes that you have in mind in the future that you're going to be implementing because of the way players are actually interacting with stuff?
Well, one of the things that is there now is it doesn't actually close up the chat window entirely. It just sort of fades, and you can just flick your mouse and just bring it straight back up. Oh. So we knew that there was a lot of stuff for the storytelling and the way stuff interacted. I would say the biggest change, and one of the ones I love the most, is people multiplayer dialogue tested extremely high, but everybody had been pre-programmed in their MMO experience to hit the town and separate.
Oh.
Right? We're going to go sell our stuff. We're going to go do our errands. We're going to do all of this stuff. And they felt like they had to get dragged around in a circle first to turn in all their quests, get their next stuff, or they would miss out on the coolness of multiplayer dialogue. And Emmanuel Osheni, who's our technical director, went very quickly and mocked up our Holo communicator prototype, and then handed it over, and the programmers got this beautiful version, and where now you can just call in. You can literally phone it in to any quest that anyone you're playing with, and you appear as the blue hologram, and so you can all be separated doing your stuff all over the planet and still stay in every conversation and stay with your group. Cool. You can't shoot people.
Always problematic.
Always problematic. It grays it out. You don't have the ability to
not fire holographic bullets.
Yeah, you can't. So sometimes there's the occasional option that says like punch him, and you're like, oh, I should have showed up so I could punch that guy.
In fact, I just punched a random person in the marketplace who I thought was him. That's unfortunate.
That would actually be awesome.
So like when you're doing all these stories, it seems like you guys would be really slowing down future expansions, because it seems like it would be like this would be one of the most time intensive things for you guys to be doing. Is that the case that you're?
What it means is we actually would have to be incredibly aware of the time it takes to do an expansion.
Yeah.
And in fact, the writing department and the concept arts and all those people have actually moved on to post-release content a long time ago.
Oh.
BioWare is pretty famous for being polish heavy.
Right.
It's the people, our fans who were who are sitting there in beta, flabbergasted, ship this game, can attest to. So what we were concentrating in the last few months was making sure the servers were going to stay up, making sure everything was secure, the bugs were fixed. You were never going to run into a place where your class story broke, like the most important stuff. So all of the key content creators had long since started working on what was coming after. The great part about it is, we have the tools now, we have the structure, we've empowered our content creators a great deal. We know how long it takes to make all this stuff. And in fact, one of the things that people noticed really quickly was maybe about 3, 4, 5 months ago, a new writing position showed up on the boards, and so I started getting this question: "Oh, are people getting skittish, or are you losing people near the end of the project?" And I was like, "No, we got to grow the writing team, right? We've got regular deliverables we've got to do now."
Yeah. Is there a department who's like, "Hey guys, if you guys could slow down the writing, that'd be cool. We can't quite keep up."
No.
Everybody's
We are.
Or are you guys slowing everything down?
We are trying not to. The writing department is always the people running in front of the giant, expensive train.
Okay.
So one of the things that's sort of interesting is we sort of said, we're kind of sympathy crunching because the team we did a really good job with crunch on this project, and so it wasn't really intense, and but obviously towards the end things started getting pretty tight. But the writers always crunch at the beginning,
right?
Because the planning and the documentation involved in something like this is massive, far just exponentially more than we did on like Dragon Age or something, because it has to be completely buttoned up. Nobody can reload. We always say is, hey, my class quest broke. Great, /unsubscribe, enter. It's the giant fear. So we've got to have everything dotted and crossed. So yeah, the writing team was crunching for the new content while everybody else was crunching to get the original game out the door.
Yeah, so kind of just to switch gears a little bit, the big trend in MMOs, I guess, is to go free to play. A lot of people are going free to play, and I can't for the life of me figure out why this game isn't free to play, because it seems like EA has been the leader on doing innovative things with their online space. Well,
one of the things that there are games that have been designed to be free to play to begin with. A number of the games that have gone to free to play were not free to play intentionally. We definitely believe that there is a space for AAA pay to play games out there. We don't think that space has gone away at all. There's not a ton of it up at the top, right? What I think you're actually going to see as future models is you're going to see a huge variety of it. I am still paying for HBO because there is nowhere else that I can get that kind of level of content. And then I download free shows from YouTube, right? And not piracy, legal things produced for YouTube, and everything in the middle. And then I watch cable stuff, and I have other stuff. As a game designer, this is actually a time that's incredibly exciting to, I have AAA super, in the market, high-priced games that, you're still paying pop premium quality for. And I have a bunch of dollar games on my iPad. And I enjoy all of them, and I enjoy them all for different reasons.
Are you still going to include some sort of cash shop for like players who want to have like cosmetic differences or like new ships?
We don't have any plans that we've talked about right now for any sort of actual cash pieces.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious as to like what is the distinction there when you go like, okay, we want a subscription or we want a free to play? Like, is it the quality of, or what is the quality metric, I guess?
I don't think it's a quality metric. Some of it is how much resources you can put into it to begin with. One of the great things about free to play is that, and let's not talk about games that tried to do one and then went to another, which is
the vast majority of most MMOs.
Which is everybody's actually worst case scenario. Right? Because you didn't plan for it. You didn't build your game to a free-to-play economy. Like a lot of the Korean games and the games that were built from the ground up are made to function that way. Let's go outside the MMOs space for a second, and I would say League of Legends. Right? Which I gave League of Legends money because I felt guilty. Like the game was so good, and I looked at how much I'd been playing it, and I'm like, I owe them money. I'm gonna buy a skin. But it's built from the ground up to bring a huge player base in. to support a very small amount of paying people, right? But you need the community there. So they've done all this stuff to do it. The difference is games like that, and I think to a large extent, the free-to-play MMOs we'll see in the future can be much smaller to begin with because it's not a paid premium content, right? You can do a smaller game with much less resources, and you can see if there's an interest level. You're taking a lot smaller upfront risk, and people can come in and say, hey, I love this game. You know, I'll give you $1 or $2, whatever it is. And then you can take that money and you can expand and build a game. Whereas if you bring the whole game out and it was a premium top flight game of so much of what we saw before this movement, right? People were just they were going for the gold and they were just dropping off the cliff.
Yeah.
And people were losing a ton of money over it. It's a really good way for a small developer to get more capital, for a smaller game to get out there faster and test, let's say, any sort of experimental new design, new ideas, without having nearly as big a downside.
Was there any point during the development of this game where you're like, ooh, why did we do so much? We should have made this smaller.
No, in fact, we've always gone the other way on this game.
Okay.
Originally, we had some pretty conservative ideas, and they all failed. So we were going to share content between the two factions, trying to do all VO and all new things and have 100% unique content between the two factions is dumb. It's super expensive. And so James Olin is our director, I always say the most successful man you've never heard of. So our director is easily, arguably, the most successful Western RPG designer in history. He designed both Baldur's Gate games, Neverwinter Nights, the original Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age Origins.
We should probably have him on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, he's not super public, which is why I'm here.
Right.
And why you didn't know his name when I said it.
Right.
But right from the beginning when we were talking about all this stuff, James has always set that quality bar, and that's why his games have been what they have, which is, does it feel like Star Wars? Do I believe this? And so we tried to write the quests that Luke Skywalker could pick up or Darth Vader could pick up. And they were dumb.
Yeah.
They were dumb quests.
Was there any sort of, does this feel like Star Wars asterisk the original trilogy on there? Because I think Star Wars feels a lot different now than it felt 20 years ago.
Part of that is you being an old fogey.
Yes,
totally.
I agree. And I feel the same way. There is a core essence of what means Star Wars that I think is actually across all three generations. And you'll listen to, and it's one of the things we always had to talk about, right? There's three full generations of Star Wars fans. There's the old people like us that are like, these whippersnappers with their karate kicks and lightsaber battles are supposed to be slow. And then there's the people who just swear by the prequels, and that's, where they came in. And then what we saw, which we didn't really expect at the beginning, was we ended up getting tons of people, like kids showing up to PAX, with their parents in their Commander Cody outfits. Right. And these kids are 10 and all they've ever seen is Clone Wars, and that's Star Wars to them. So we have to make it feel like all of that. Right. It has to have that core essence of that great, epic, old 50s space opera adventure feels in whatever you're doing. And the other one for that was the companion characters, too. Yeah. We were going to share them. Oh. Writing completely unique companion characters for every class that had to be just dumb. And again, we sat down and we tried to, all right, here's Chewbacca, except now he's going to hang out with Vader.
Yeah. Because everybody loves Chewbacca, and even Darth Vader can't say no to a Wookiee.
Yeah, and the Wookiee's going to love him. No.
Until he falls asleep and then smothers him.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we ended up making all of our decisions based on here is what was going to achieve what the goal of the game was. But it did mean that from a content side, it just got exponentially larger.
How much or how little did you look at Star Wars Galaxies as a way to, here's what they did right, what they did wrong?
We look at every game, and that's
it
that's
didn't
really
really
for everything.
matter that this was a previous Star Wars MMO.
No, we were definitely we were trying to create a game based on Star Wars. So I would say that we looked at every Star Wars product. I've looked, oh my God, the amount of extended universe stuff I had to go through and memorize and be able to work with. But we probably sat down and watched The Empire Strikes Back 300 times in the first year, because if you're going to go right to the source, right, it's not really important how other people have interpreted even MMOs. Although we have people on the design team who've worked on almost every major MMO that's out there.
How often do you feel a little burned out on Star Wars? It's like, you know what, I don't want to read this extended universe novel by someone that did a travel guide for Western Wyoming.
You're like, how is this canon? This is ridiculous.
Well, and not all of it is. We end up having those questions where I'll call Lin Chi or somebody over at licensing and say like, hey, this new piece came out. Is this canonical or is this not canonical?
Please tell me this is fanfic. Please.
And some goes either way. For me, it's actually like, this is the greatest license you could ever work with. If you're going to do a license thing and you're not going to, you may as well go big, right? You may as well go for the biggest, most popular Western license that's ever existed. But also, the reason that there's so much Star Wars stuff out there is they're an extremely generous licensor. They're totally fine with you blazing your own path. They're totally fine with 6 years. I've never had a major conflict with them. We never had that time where we had to go to bat over something, because, our creative ideals. And part of that was because we love Empire Strikes Back and we're trying to write a love letter to Star Wars. We're not trying to say like, I always thought Star Wars would be cooler if it was more cyberpunk or, do some sort of weird Star Wars. And they're not, they're very into sharing Star Wars. And once they believe that you have the understanding of what Star Wars is, which is why this deal got struck at the first place, is because we had done Knights of the Old Republic. And, they had already seen how we approach Star Wars. Just no control issues.
So with this massive universe that is Star Wars and so many species running around, what was the decision that made it so all of the playable characters were pretty much just human and humanoids? Like, I really want to be like a Wookiee or an Ewok or something like that.
Right. So one of the things that we decided really early was it's a role-playing game. It's not a toy box. You're not just going into the sort of big collection of the Star Wars toys you got and like, oh, look at me, I found a Wookiee.
While rad, not quite.
Well, rad. Really hard to do good storytelling in, and this is a very controversial one. And I know that people will push back on this, but the extended universe is extremely big, and there has not been a single book series, a single comic series, a TV show, anything ever driven by a non-human protagonist, except like little cartoon spin-offs.
The holiday special,
the Ewoks,
right, exactly. So, when you find those exceptions, think about them. And the reason is that
think about how they're a cash-in.
Think about how much you loved them compared to the rest of Star Wars. Star Wars is at its core the journey of things we understand out into the alien, right? The reason the original Star Wars worked so well is there was a kid that, could have been one of us had we been whiny. And he went out into the world and got to see all these strange and exotic things. And that's why we do really go and make sure for the companion characters, we get a lot of those crazy species. We get a lot of that cool stuff in there. But at the point where we say, hey, we need you to emote and empathize and understand. And by the way, you're a pile of goo with living bones inside that sing harmonies. Your role playing is really, really challenged.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to get kind of your opinion on one of the things that happened this week, and it happened to happen with BioWare. Basically, yesterday or a few days ago, Ray Musica said something along the lines of they're going to be trying to take the Dragon Age open world to a more open world component. And I don't, as someone who's written for Dragon Age and also for a wide open MMO, what do you think? Does Dragon Age have that kind of room to go open world, do you think?
Oh, wow. If anything does.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that, and so I didn't hear the press announcement.
It was not a press announcement. It was just an
off the cuff. So yeah, I've been head down on the press tours.
Right.
So one of the interesting things about Dragon Age, and one of the discussions we had of why we went after a license to begin with on this game, is I'd come off Dragon Age, and Dave Gator, who's the lead writer on Dragon Age, and that team, long before I'd even gotten in there, I got to do some cool stuff with the dwarves and change up some stuff that I didn't think worked really well. But there had to be at least a year or more like a man-year or more of work just done on background and world building.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean world building in the technical sense. I mean like basically writing the world's biggest pen and paper RPG module for Dragon Age. Dragon Age is so insanely detailed and complete. Like Ferelden is just one little tiny chunk of it,
Right.
and Arlay is another chunk, and it's all out there, and it's all Dave's got all of it, and it's part of the reason that I went to work for BioWare, and specifically, like I had the interview, and basically the discussion at the end was. They said, okay, well, you can move to Edmonton and come live in the cold and go do all this. And I was like, can I work on Dragon Age? And it was from seeing what they had done for that. So yes, if there's ever a franchise that that could grow in lots of different places, I think it's actually that world.
Yeah.
I like that you guys made this franchise, this world that's apparently scalable all the way up to an MMO level if you wanted to do that. And then the first spin-off you guys do is a Facebook game.
So I'm going to go ahead and record and say that was probably one of my favorite Facebook games ever.
Fair enough.
I really enjoyed that. As Facebook games go.
Not a
I
bad.
really enjoyed the Dragon Age Facebook game.
So when you kind of have the experience of writing for a single player game and this MMO. Is there much of a difference?
And basketball games.
And of course the basketball games.
I did all the writing too, so
I really like the story mode.
Yeah. Are you able to approach them differently, or is it the same approach, or what do you have to do differently when you're doing a single player story or an MMO story?
Well, you don't have some of the tricks in the MMO story, but you have other people.
Okay.
So what you're doing is you're bringing in a larger cast, but you can't, for instance, I can't trap you in prison and say, until you figure out this puzzle, you're not getting out of prison. Because you're like, oh, but I want to play War Zones. All right, well, I guess that didn't work.
Right.
Return to ship. You press your button and it's all over. And you do have to understand the community. A lot of the tech stuff we changed early was, you want to talk about things that changed in testing. So when you play the game, you notice when you click a NPC, everyone who's not in your party disappears for the conversation. Which, if you haven't noticed, we don't draw any of the other players while you're having a conversation, because players realized in our very first test we ever did with multiple people, somebody went on Hutta, figured out where the very first quest was anyone would get, and figured out exactly how to get in position where when you were talking to the quest giver, his butt would continually, the player's butt would just come through the guy's face over and over while you were talking to him.
Very nice. Classy guy.
The MMO presents unique challenges sometimes.
Yeah.
But being able to write things where you say, okay, this is very geared as sort of this serious, intense piece, and the Jedi Master's there, and the Jedi are going to know who this person is, and they've dealt with her before. All right, now the smuggler's there. Well, she's kind of hot. Okay, so the smuggler probably needs to be able to hit on her, right? And then the Jedi need to be able to be mortified, and so the complexities of that. Even on, a lot of people don't group up super early, but if you played like in Corbin, you get to that very first guy, and we tried to make sure that even the quests that were not class quests felt like class quests by giving people an awareness of your class story. So a lot of people in the Origin worlds can't tell the difference. The first guy you meet who's a world quest starts out by saying, you were one of the slaves, you came off the shuttle, if you're an Inquisitor. But if you've got the warrior there as well, and the Inquisitor started it, he still says that line, but one of the warrior's first lines that he can respond with is, oh, he must have been able to tell because of your smell, right? And so you get this sort of party banter and things that are, you continually have to have in your mind, which is not just what might be happening around the player, but then what their party makeup might look like.
So I've been having a lot of fun in the group discussions, but a lot of times it hasn't seemed like there's been a huge reason for an actual party to get together. Like, when I was just starting on, say, Hutta, I actually didn't even realize that I could join up with a lot of people and get social points. What are you kind of doing to influence people to party early on?
Well, the major one for that is, so on the Origin worlds, frankly, we don't care. The Origin worlds are about 60 to 70% class content on purpose. They are a big welcome to story world tutorial. They teach you who your class is. They teach you what your voice is like. They let you develop your character. If you love playing multiplayer, you can, but they're definitely not keyed for it. You can actually see the very clear transition when we say, right when you leave your Origin world, you hit your first flashpoint, and we say, go get a party, right? Go get a team. You're gonna need it. And that's when we start to transition. The Capital world is more party-based, but still very, very solo-friendly. And then we really lean hard into you should be playing with friends. You don't have to, but you should be for the best experience post-Capital World.
So one other question that I had, we'll probably try to wrap it up here, is the one thing I noticed when I was watching Curtis play is a lot of the story quests are like super dramatic. It's like, almost in a campy way, it's kind of dramatic. So it's like, okay, this person, he is totally the savior of the galaxy. But then at the same time, you've got like all of these other people that are saviors of the galaxy. Is that something that you had to like try to find a good balance or keep it away from the camp?
It depends where you put camp. I mean,
Okay.
so what we've talked about today is that Star Wars is heavily based on 1940s serial space opera, and then talked about, and some of it seems a little campy.
Yeah. Right. I guess how do you
Star Wars is a big Western modern fairy tale.
Yeah.
And RPGs are really about, Civ Meyer, Civ Meyer. That's actually, it works perfect. It might as well be Civ Meyer.
He's not listening. Don't worry.
Sid Meier very famously said, why conquer the backyard when you can conquer the world? And you really do want the dramatics. And sometimes it's a little bit heavy because what I didn't want was, hey, giant warrior who can save time and space, I lost my kitten.
Right.
So the rule I set down for the writers really early was, imagine that your hero always turns to the character and says, I need to save the planet. What? And they needed to have a good response, right? They had to have something that was dramatic and important enough to say, well, pause saving the planet for a second and, come do this piece.
Right.
The bit about having, multiple people doing it, really what I tended to think about very early was, strangely enough, Marvel Comics New York.
Okay.
What happens if just one superhero doesn't show up for one day? Like the Earth is just destroyed, right? Because like if you read any of there's like 300 superheroes living there, and they're all
busy.
Yeah, and they're all busy, and they're all dramatically saving, at least the city, if not like all of time and space. So, I mean, it is important that all of these Jedi Knights come to work every day.
So the goal then is to make everybody feel like they're Luke Skywalker. Is that fair?
Yeah, the goal is to make everybody feel, and that's actually, interestingly, we went, joking aside, we went very often back to looking at some of the comic books and how they tied things together and how they made them work and feel right in a complete galaxy. It's why the stories tend to be much more personal, even though they are, very intensely important for the war. It's your personal conflict, it's your personal development, that's going on. And then the world quests that you do multiplayer tend to be a little bit more broad in scope, is exactly that. These are all, we are not playing an everyman in the Star Wars galaxy. It's why when you hit the ground as a Jedi Knight, they're like, wow, you're one of the greatest people we've ever seen as a fighter coming out of the training.
Right. You're like, what? I'm level 5.
Yeah. You start as a member of Havoc Squad, which is like the most elite group. We are not playing an everyman. That was never the goal. It was never, you weren't going to later get to be the shopkeeper or whatever. Like, you're not going to be the guy who is mopping up in the back of Cloud City.
Yeah.
The whole point was you are a small group, which, let's be clear, few thousand per server is still a very small group in a billions of people galaxy who are out there as the most important people in the world.
Which makes sense because having that all on one guy's shoulders is kind of rough.
Yeah, spread it out a little bit.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move to the rest of the show, and this involves, wrapping up, basically. But we have some, one of the things that we do each week is a 10 years ago, This Week in Reviews, where I give you the score and then a paragraph from one of our reviews, and you try to guess the game.
Okay.
So here we go. The score is 8.4. This expansion is easily the biggest, most significant for this MMO yet, and considering the massive size of the other expansions, that's no small feat. You could criticize it for its turbulent and perhaps premature launch, but that's already water under the bridge. You could also knock it for its steep system requirements, but in due time, that will be water under the bridge as well. The fact is, this expansion ensures the livelihood of a majority of this game's players for yet another long stretch of time. That is, it ensures this game will remain very competitive with any other games in its category for the foreseeable future.
It's got to be an EverQuest thing, right?
That's exactly what I thought. 10
EverQuest.
years ago, it's got to be EverQuest.
Yeah.
And
Ruins of Canark or whatever?
No.
that's like the only EverQuest subtitle I can
That's the
come
only
up
one
with
I
right
remember,
now.
yes.
This is possibly the beginning of the end for EverQuest.
Oh, Kitty Kitty Bang Bang?
Shadows of Luklin.
Was that the kitty cat one?
I Maybe. No, was that feel? I don't know. It's been a long time since I played. Is it weird to think that your game could be around in 10 years?
It's fantastic. Like, that's one of the things that we actually did very early as an exercise is we said, okay, what does expansion content look like for 10 years?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a story-based piece, you don't want to be the equivalent of that show that didn't think it was getting picked up after season 3 and then did and had to scramble and be like, oh, and all those things, yeah, no, they're not as bad as they looked. And look, new stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, no, I mean, I love the idea. And it doesn't seem crazy, right? It took, like, I've been working on the project for 6 years. So, like, it'd be nice if it was out at least that long.
It would be nice if you get some, and that's another thing. It's like when you're looking at the stuff that you did 6 years ago, you're like, as any writer I'm sure is, it's like, ooh, can't believe that's still out there.
Yeah, about a year ago.
I want that one back.
About a year ago, I looked at it and I said, you know what? I think we're ready to make an MMO now.
Yeah.
I think we've learned all our lessons. We know everything we need to know. If we can just start with Korriban right now and go front to back, we've got it.
Yeah. All right.
One more thing, real quick though. This just launched.
Yeah.
But you're not done working on it.
No.
So, as a writer, you don't get that resolution of just being like, done, finished.
Which is actually fantastic because there is so much stuff that we didn't get to do. Again, I bring it back to I know a lot of writers in different genres and do different things, and I think the people that we've got the most in common with at this point is for the tour team is people who do television shows, like who actually have a full season schedule, put it together, have a plot that wraps up, and not like a show that it's just a bunch of one-offs, but is actually a serial developing show.
Right.
Say like an HBO show where we don't care that you didn't watch the earlier episodes, which is great for us because you have no choice, right? Even if we do expand, you have to start at the beginning. Yeah. So we don't have to worry about people coming in late. So we get to, there's so many themes, there's so many stories, there's so many ideas that we didn't get into the game that have been sitting there in the writer's room that, excited for the future.
That's kind of interesting. Is there a story that you can't tell because it would just completely let you not or stop that ability to keep going in the universe?
Oh, sure. So, and then the Sith warrior obliterates the entire Republic.
Right.
Chapter 2.
I want to do that.
Right. Yeah. And at this point, everybody is dead, and the world has mutated into horrible aliens. And there's places that we can't go back and retcon our whole franchise. So,
is there one that you would like to do that you just can't? Top of your head.
I don't think there's anyone that
the team has brought forward, and
no, I think there's the only one, and that's the only one that ever we ran into the single only place we ran into Lucas. Because we were like, we're gonna do Dagobah, and we're gonna explain the tree, and we're gonna have the whole, and then nope.
Oh.
There are a couple things that George holds himself.
Wow.
And those are specific, like can't name Yoda's race, can't explain the tree, can't talk about what's going on there. George has got it. And we don't know when he's doing something with it, but nobody else gets to touch that one.
Wow, that's kind of interesting. Okay, let's move on to, we have one comment. Wait, is this a comment? Yeah, this is a comment from...
Is this just random writing on my computer?
It's more of a critique.
Occasionally I throw things into my script and I'm like, oh, I got to get to this, but first I have to do some prep work. But I completely forgot to do the prep work. So we're going to... What it is he took a picture of this place at a bazaar in Bangalore. Dev, his name is.
Okay.
For John Tech, apparently. It's a repair shop for video games. We have this phone number that's 1-877 John Tech, which is it's like a mnemonic device that we use. It's really nothing that pertains to you. But it's
I have
totally
lost
an
the
inside
thread.
joke.
The thread is gone.
Now.
This is why he's the host.
I'll post a picture of the forums of John Tech. It's quite funny, I must say. Anyway,
I trust you.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about that one. But yes, if you have a comment, question, correction, clarification, anything, email us at hotspot@gamespot.com or give us a call, 1-877-506-8324. Once again, that's 1-877 John Tech.
John Tech.
I haven't actually checked the messages in a while because I still don't know how to make the phones work up here, but I will eventually get to it.
So call in and leave a message no one will ever check.
At some point in the future, I may or may not delete all of those messages and start
You just don't
over.
want to listen to like 900 messages in a row.
Right. It would be very, very arduous for me. Anyway, so Pop Quiz Hotspot. Pop Quiz is our trivia section where I ask a panel or ask a question to you all. You guys can answer it. Cool. If not, I give them stuff. So Steve H quizzes. The voice of Nathan Drake, Nolan North, currently has a recurring role in what TV show?
Ooh.
Nathan Drake, Nolan North, what TV show?
Got it. I feel like I could guess like 20% of the shows on TV and be right.
Yeah, go for it. Name one.
I'll say Ben 10.
Nope. Kurt?
I can't even.
You don't even know who
Nolan
Nolan North is. That's fine.
I recognize the name.
ABC Family, Pretty Little Liars. Voice of Nathan Drake is in Pretty Little Liars.
Does this even count as gaming trivia?
Yeah, because it counts because we have that Nathan Drake feature on the site, which you should totally go check out.
Tie-ins.
Tie-ins. I don't know. Okay, Silo. Let's see. That was Steve H. You lose. Silo's 91 or 9/11 quizzes.
Wait, Steve H lost?
Steve H just. No, wait. Steve H won.
Yes, we lost.
Yeah.
You guys lost.
We lost.
That's my bad.
He gets our things.
So Steve
I
H.
guess that's what this thing is for.
We will give you. First, whatever they are, sound box of the show. So Steve H, yes, you are a winner. That's my bad. We'll send you something. I don't know. Probably the Old Republic and some other useless junk lying around the office.
Some other useless junk, not just the useless junk that is the Old Republic. But.
Do you not have some useless junk here?
Yeah. What was that Pikmin thing you had?
Oh, right. No, we're not going to give that away yet. But I do want to. I want to advertise it because I posted this. I posted this on our Twitter feed saying that I'm going to give this away, and absolutely nobody responded or sent me a question. So then I realized nobody actually reads our Twitter feed. GameSpot HotSpot is what it is. But so this is what this is. We were cleaning out the office. It's a Pikmin 2 poster signed by Miyamoto, Takashi Tezuka, Hino, and some other dudes who I don't really know who they are. But that is a prize that you could win. So next week, when we have our next show, the first week of December, January, that will be the prize. So go ahead, write us some trivia. It has to be NES era or beyond. You can send us a riddle or a theme song, something that's interesting that will make for good entertainment. Because clearly this is not.
A riddle would have been very BioWare-esque.
Oh yeah, yeah. We occasionally
before to stop me from getting out of the door or something.
Yeah,
you must answer my riddles.
We've had a few riddles that are decent.
Yeah,
no real standout riddles.
It's hard.
It is hard. But anyway, give us something or a theme song. Like give us the theme music for something or from a game. We like those. But you could win this. But Steve H wins, this guy's game. So that is that. We have some housekeeping. To Ali in Yemen. Yes, you are indeed the only person in Yemen who listens to us. So thank you. Find us more fans. Bring your friends. Tell your friends. We have other podcasts. There's the HotSpot and GameSpot UK podcast. Still, they have not renamed their podcast to something that isn't dumb.
Wow. At least it's accurate.
Just calling it out.
You're the news guy. You're supposed to be substance over style. What the hell?
I'm a turn of the century.
What news are you watching?
I am the news guy in I don't know Pulitzer.
You're the yellow journalist.
Yeah, I'm the muckraker. I want to be that guy.
Delightful.
Right, delightful. Anyway, so again, this is the last hotspot of the season, the year? I don't know. Last one of 2011. We will return in January with all new episodes of the hotspot.
No more reruns.
No more reruns. I should totally do a rerun next week. See, if you were still hosting, then we would have probably outtakes.
Yes, nice. Instead I've just got blackmail material now.
Right. No, I don't cut anything. That's where you went wrong. So that is what's going on there. But I think it does it for this week. Daniel, thank you for coming in. We really appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me. It was good fun.
Yeah. Let's see. Brendan Sinclair, thank you. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Happy holidays. Curtis.
Yeah, that was radical.
That was radical. That does it for me. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hotspot out!